notes. And the pictures that you're going to see have been taken only 3 days ago, actually. So I will share it with you now.
When you see Earth from space for the first time, you literally fall in love with your home planet. The emotion is intense in front of the combination of beauty, fragility of life, and power of the geological and meteorological elements. The field of view extends to thousands of kilometers around, and as we fly fast at 28,000 kilometers per hour, the landscape below varies very quickly, showing a striking diversity. You are seized by the dramatic contrast between this big, bright, colorful ball illuminated by the sun and the deep black background of the cosmos. Indeed, astronauts can't discern many stars in the sky where the sun or the earth shines through the spaceship windows. You feel the need to protect Earth because the atmosphere appears so thin on the horizon that you realize how much all life on Earth depends on this so tiny layer of gas maintained by such a fragile balance with the ocean. But after a few orbits, you see volcanoes, big mountains, hurricanes, huge tidal waves, glaciers, gigantic icebergs, and you realize that Earth lives its own life, regardless of human activities. You become respectful. Earth is a very strong and powerful tectonic and climatic object, which may seem a paradox since, at the same time, it shows fragility of life. If you turn first to look at the first places where you've been living, you quickly enjoy watching our planet as a whole. It is isolated, meaning nothing else around exists which can come and help us. It is unique since no other planet resembles Earth by far. It is finite because from space you see its limited dimensions. And again, you are so impressed by the living beauty of the whole show that you feel happy and can't prevent emotional tears forming in your eyes. As you understand the rarity of this view lived by only few of us, you decide your duty is to share the experience and to make understand that all humans are members of the same crew of this single natural spaceship traveling alone in this freezing, black, infinite emptiness of the universe. Indeed, we should manage Earth as a spaceship, understanding how it works and living in harmony with its resources like we do with our own spaceship in order to never be in lack. Earth, one home, one crew, one mission. Let all future generations live long and prosper.
Right, so this project is called One Home, and their goal is to use what we call the overview effect. That is something that has been called like that by astronauts, of like how you feel when you actually see the Earth from space, and how it makes you feel, and how it creates like kind of a shift of consciousness on how you should take care of the planet, because it's so small and fragile and unique. So I think I will share this video in the group. I think that spreading this video is a very beautiful way to celebrate Earth Day, and especially because the first video that has been taken of the planet that is called the Blue Marble, which is like the most famous picture on the planet, has been also a reason that has kind of one of the things that have encouraged the first people to launch the first Earth Day event 50 years ago in the 70s. So it's even more a nice way to celebrate the 50 years of Earth Day event. So without further ado, we're gonna switch to Dhriti. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and you can share yours to start the presentation. Okay. And enjoy, everyone.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone joining in from around the world. This is a very different format. Although I'm wearing a formal T-shirt, I'm not completely formal, and it's a very interesting way of engaging with you all. I'm a geographer. What geographers do basically, not only we study the names of capitals around the world, but we also study the interconnectedness of human beings and also how we as humans interact with our natural environment. And my entire education has been in geographical science with my undergraduate masters and as well as my PhD, which I just submitted last week. So it has been a great journey, and part of which in this journey, during this journey, I have come across people, my professors and others, and also studied Earth, looked at it in a very different angle as my friends and family do, and it has been very engaging in that way. So today, thank you to Feiy and Pauline and everyone to really create such platform where I, coming from an academia, academics can actually interact with you as a community. And I'm sure there will be academic in you as well, but also there we will see people from the industry, from different social groups, and bringing everyone together in one group, in one platform is what Feiy is doing, and it's very, very good thing. Thank you very much again for this evening. Uh, to really start off, I'll give you really an introduction, really the present climate and its future projection. A key thing about climate change is really what I have looked into my PhD was expansion of our cities and how we living in mega cities and that effect and how it's really linked with infectious disease and outbreaks and why urbanization, climate change, and really they are linked together. And then United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and how really they're trying their level best to be that global body to guide us through this whole process. Right, so I'm going to start off with so the whole presentation will have graphs, the less scientific, less of mathematics, but real numbers. And to begin with, welcome to the Anthropocene. Well, this is the word we've been using now, not accepted by the geologists, but at least by geographers to really sense the human impact on our environment. And it's really after the 1950s when we really start to see the changes. And this little GIF here shows exactly that. And if you really closely observe 1950s and how you see the global temperature really change after 1950s and catches up and is approaching to 1.5 degrees. So the intensity have increased just after 1950s. And there is a reason why 1950 has been designated as the start of the epoch of Anthropocene, mainly because of its global carbon emissions and carbon calculation, which is currently is at 413 parts per million. And it's from the NASA website, so you can go around and check as well. I have throughout the presentation and the slides, I will share with you, there are links for you to go and check if I'm telling you the truth or not. So this is a very nifty GIF here to give a sense of what's been happening just after 1950s. And it's why 1950s been designated as the beginning of Anthropocene. You see this great acceleration after 1950. You see countries like India, China, United States, everywhere. You have this rise, sudden rise in CO2 emissions. And this has been going through till 1950 till now. And that's one of the reasons why scientists have really come up with this whole idea that right now what we are really living in is actually the Anthropocene, the era, the age of humans. Well, there are a lot of evidences, and I'm not going to go through all of them because there are a lot of scientific papers. You can actually go through, there's a link here, you can go through each and every one. There's ocean acidification, extreme events. Really, I don't have to really talk about extreme events. We've been seeing what happening in Amazon and as well in Australia. And there's a lot of evidence of what's been happening, and we really don't need any evidence to tell you that yes, there has been a substantial change in our climate. But why that thing matters is a degree of 1 degree really makes a lot of difference, because it's absolutely unusual. This degree of difference is very unusual. It's as unusual as Billie Eilish singing a Bollywood song. It's that unusual to have this kind of change in our natural world. And there's link as well for you to see the recent study. One of the other thing really is to project, is to see what's happening. So what we in our department as well, we look at data sets taken from ice cores and coral reefs. And what you see, this black line over here, is the observed data set. So we have this data set. And it's a simple mathematics, really. So you have observed data, and then you project what's going to happen in the future. And those projections will have a higher and a lower, and even lower simulations. So that's what it's showing. This is carbon emissions, that's the global temperature, and that's the sea level rise. And all of the projections really shows an increase in temperature as well as in sea level, if the business remains as usual. So if what have the observed data has been, so if we maintain what we've been doing right now, there will be an increase in all of these parameters. And to really show sea level, because we all live, well, majority of us in coastal cities. I am currently in Shanghai, where the Shanghai sits on a mean sea level of 4 meters. And really I came across this, sorry. Sorry about that. This animation from NASA, it's a simulation really, which shows you a 10 to 15% of melting of ice in the Antarctica and in Greenland would actually substantially take entire Florida. Or you look at Mississippi Delta. Mississippi Delta region is already experiencing land loss, and another 10 to 15% will actually take entire Mississippi Delta region. And this video, I have shared the link. You can actually, it's very cool. I've used it in my PhD as well. It's a very cool simulation. Really shows the intensity of the change. It's not just animation. It's not just Mickey Mouse playing. It's data driven. So it's basically an animation showing you the change if 10 to 15% of ice sheet melts in Antarctica or in Greenland. Moving ahead, it's all about looking at the vulnerability of people. Really, the vulnerable people are those who are obviously at the moment emitting less of carbon, but you're looking at population as well. So there is India, China, a lot of countries in Africa, South Africa, for example, or even Ethiopia, countries who are very vulnerable to change in climate because of not only because of their location where they are, but also because of socioeconomic conditions. And these are the people which we really need to care about, because I think I'm very privileged that I'm able to wash my hands every time I come into my room. But I know there are people in around the world, many parts of the world, where there is not enough water to drink, and there is no question about washing their hands. So COVID-19 in a way really, really terrifies me, for not only for us, but also for them who are at the front line in terms of vulnerability. So really to link this with something which I've been studying throughout my PhD is expansion of our urban footprint. And what has happened is that urbanization has not only within the land, so you see what was New Delhi 50 years ago, which has expanded, but also towards the ocean. So this is a paper which I published, if you're interested, you can read. It's about Chinese reclamation, land reclamation in the Chinese coast. We are aware with the infectious disease coming from the terrestrial, because we are basically, there's a lot of deforestation. Interactive with the nature is not precise as we think we are doing. But something which worries me more is that we have no idea how we are interacting with the marine ecosystem as well, because such scale of reclamation is ultimately going to have a lot of consequences in the future. These other two gifts here basically gives you an idea of expansion, of urban expansion in Tehran, in Iran, but also famous in Amazon Brazilian. The deforestation there has been drastic in last 10 to 15 years, which has led to forest fires, and we have all seen that in last year actually. But one of the other things, because I study with satellite images and I love maps really. One of the very interesting one is nighttime lab. It's about how our Earth looks like at night. It exactly looks like this, but well, not like this. It's just the colors I played. It doesn't look like yellow and red, but it basically shows you the expansion really. So if you these are famous cities you can recognize. That's Paris, that's Madrid, that's London, and that's Milan. But you can see the night's light in 1992 was really concentrated to the cities here. So that's at cities. But you see in 2011, that has expanded. So there are more cities now. There are more urbanizations. You see Poland, places in Poland, and also Moscow. There has been an expansion of cities. And that's obviously because of increase in population. 7 billion is not a less number, but also the physical expansion of our land has come at a very big cost. And really this has come from construction. If you really, this is a very interesting paper I came that globally 1.8 cubic meters of concrete per person is manufactured annually. Now you look at Shanghai, for example, and you get one building, and then you imagine New York and other cities. That's the amount of sand material we use to build our cities. And you can really see the human footprint. We've been probably everywhere just around the Sahara Desert and the Amazon, which is the only places we are not. But the human footprint has been extraordinarily, in last 30 years, have increased extraordinarily. And that has put a lot of, that has a lot of impact on our environment, and part of which is you see outbreak of diseases. I'm going to come to what really you all are curious about. But you look at Shanghai and its expansion over the years. This is Shanghai, 32 years worth of satellite imagery clubbed into one frame, and it's just showing you the expansion of a city from the center of the city, really what it was in early 1980s, to now, just in 30 years, it has reclaimed more than 500 square kilometers. So what expansion you're looking here, it's not just inward, but Shanghai has also expanded outwards. And that has a lot of impact on the marine ecosystem as well as terrestrial. But it's something to really frown upon. It's something to really look and understand. But what happens when you expand your urban footprint is that you have to take it from somewhere else. So we have been taking it from our forest land. So this is a paper just published last year looking at using satellite images to track change in forest cover in Vietnam. And you see there is a decline in the evergreen forest in Vietnam, but an increase in cropland because we have to feed, we have to eat. And that has, again, tremendous. So now you see we are slowly coming to the topic of disease outbreak, because you see this forest belongs to a lot of species, a lot of animal species, which is their home. And what happens when you take someone's habitat and you leave them in a very different habitat, their transmission, their interaction with us is quite hectic. And one of the reasons I think infectious diseases happens, and it's happening and will happen, because of our urban expansion, the way we are expanding. So the other one, you look at Borneo in Indonesia, in 1950, more than 90% of the island was covered with forests, and now it's 15 to 20%, especially now when Jakarta is actually planning to shift to Borneo because Jakarta is actually sinking as a result of sea level rise. But really, I came across another to really understand the interaction between, because it's not just about one wet market, it's not just about one country, because the phenomena of expansion, urban expansion, as you saw on the maps, it's been in Europe, in the US, in China, in India, in everywhere. So it's been a collective issue, and to tackle climate change, to tackle COVID-19, to tackle any of these has to be a collective effort and not just one country. I've shared this link of this very interesting article which talks about the change in the natural environment. The kind of changes we've been doing in our natural environment has a direct relationship with the disease outbreak. And you can see that. I've seen that in India, I've seen that in South Africa, I've seen that in China, in different parts of China as well. So the way we alter our natural environment will have those kinds of consequences. And this was a very interesting infographic prepared by the United Nations Environment Program, where they really talk about deforestation as well as the intensified agricultural and lifestyle production. And that puts a lot of stress. And I think this was the reason of Ebola outbreak next to Ebola River, the intensification of agriculture. But the main question is COVID-19 really, is it a solution to our climate goals? Well, it's actually not, but it does really show the amount of impact we've been doing on our natural environment. For example, air pollution. And I think you've all come across this map, which was, I think it was done by The Independent, and it's just showing nitrogen dioxide just in the beginning of early January in China, and then what happened just after the lockdown. With the kind of tools I use for my mapping, I made this GIF for you, and it's basically showing entire world. On your left, on this side is 2020, so basically this year, and as I slide through this towards right is basically showing 2019. So you can see the change really of us staying indoors, and nitrogen dioxide is basically the fumes which comes out from our automobile cars. So we are driving less, which means we are polluting less. But of course, the change because of COVID-19, this will be the maximum drop in carbon emissions, and it's much more than Spanish flu or even the financial crisis in 2008. It will be a 5% drop in carbon emissions, and that's enough really to show us the kind of impact we do. But it also shows the collaborative effort. So because the entire world is locked down, really, it shows you the collaborative effort of reducing the emissions. So I think this is showing you both a consequence of climate change, but also as a positivity, you can see what collaboration can actually do for our environment. And there's another project, another paper really I came across, which was written, there was an article in Guardian. COVID-19, yes, is a threat, of course, but it has been enhanced by air pollution. There are a lot of people in the US suffer from asthma and suffer from other pre-respiratory conditions. And that's mainly linked to air pollution and mainly linked to change in the local weather and microclimatic factors. And those one really enhance the impact of COVID-19. And there's a paper, I've shared you the link, you can go and check. And this study was done in the US, but I'm sure the similar results you will find in every other country. I'm sure you will find for many cities in India, many cities in Indonesia, Malaysia, you will find this same pattern there. But to move forward really from here is to understand that that disease outbreak is basically an outcome of change in the environment. So you look at biophysical parameters such as temperature and humidity and change in temperature with the socioeconomic and how medical geography works. And it's a system, it's an interconnected system where we as human beings really are connecting and connecting with our environment, and the environment is also connecting with us. And we cannot really depend on disease outbreaks for our climate goals. So yes, if you are thinking that's not an answer for you, but it's actually true. We cannot depend, although we have cleaner air, it's good to see, it's very nice to see that it is, but it's not going to help us to reach our climate goal. But it will have substantial amount of impact on our environment. We're going to see some positive impact, but that's not the solution, because I come from a geography background in environment, and although I support environment and geography, my friends are engineer, economists, some of them are into business. They cannot stop their life because of that. So that's not a practical solution. So we need to really, what we need to look at is alternatives to what we are having. And one of the alternatives really is what we are doing right now, is communication. And what Feiy has done is to really looking at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, is to create a platform where we from the academia can actually connect with you as a community, and can actually talk about, discuss, and also to act upon. And one of the really major changes I've seen of community-driven and also governance here plays a very, very important role, was the trash sorting segregation, waste segregation drive in Shanghai. And I tell you a story. I was here in Shanghai in early 2016. And that time I used to tell IE and like other people, why don't we segregate? There's no point of mixing a plastic bag with a chicken curry, for example. That doesn't really go. We need to segregate our waste and waste product. And it was not until the community, the research domain really came together, prove, give evidence to the government, and with the effort of the government, there was a big drive in Shanghai. I don't know how much is happening in city center and residential area. In the university campus, it's very it's very strict. You have to segregate your waste in different categories, and that really helps eventually in reaching the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. One of the other examples of community-driven action is this, let me see if I can pronounce this correctly, is the Wahonguni, is anyone from New Zealand here? It's from Wahonguni River in New Zealand, where the river was actually given right as a human being. And that case went up to around 20 years, and now this river has a human right. And you can read about this in the link I've shared. But if you don't know where it is, I'm sure you have watched Lord of the Rings, and many times you have watched and admired this river as you were watching Hobbit or Lord of the Rings. And really these two examples are very crucial when you look at, if you're asking for, well, what can we do? It's a very collaborative action, because even I in the academia is very frustrated, because what we need to do is just publish papers and really that's it. But I think it's a collaborative effort, and our job in publishing papers really helps, because that data linked with your effort and governance makes the whole change. That's what we are looking for at the moment. So really, why should we and I really care about climate change? You see, I don't have to give evidence. You've seen forest fires. There was a forest fire recently was it in Sichuan province in China? But also we have Amazon forest burning last year. Australia burning, and there was a recent one in Russia near Chernobyl that was burning as well. So change in there. Not able to talk about hurricanes. I'm really worried about this summer for also for South China Sea, but also for West Coast in the US. There's going to be an increasing intensity of hurricanes and typhoon as we approach summer in the Northern Hemisphere. But also we look at drought. I come from India, and there are a lot of places in central India already experiencing this phenomena. So it's not something which we need to prove to any leader of our world. I'm not mentioning any name, but it's something we are witnessing and suffering from all, and there is a collective need which is required. And if you really want to work on climate change, you have to, because you really don't want to make this lady very angry, because I am very scared from her. But that's about it. That's what I was really interested to talk about, share what climate change has to do with us and you. But I think it's a very collaborative action which we need to take. And I will be here in Shanghai for another couple of years. And I'm really keen, if any one of you are really interested to understand more about what Earth is, what we are doing to our planet Earth, and how we can collectively make changes. And I'm really happy to talk with you, interact with you. I'll share my email address, and please feel free to get in touch. This is a very good picture launched by NASA on the Earth Day, showing really what we are really connected to. That's our planet Earth. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Dhriti. Thank you very much. We're gonna take questions. I'm sure there are already a few questions in the chat when you were speaking. Actually, and just before we start with the question, just to relate to something that you said, I'm actually wondering if we would have almost 80 people in this group today, if it was not because we have related this topic to the coronavirus. So I don't know if the effect overall is going to be positive or negative, but at least that's a good start. And that's one of the positive effects of this crisis, is that maybe we get more people getting interested in this topic. So we're not gonna unmute people because, as I said, we're almost 80, so it might be a bit chaotic. But you can ask your questions in the chat. So we can start with the questions that have been asked already, but feel free to just ask your question, and we'll make sure that Dhriti have them. So first, I think that was related to Leia asked, why is the US so vulnerable? Why America is not so vulnerable? So I think it was at the beginning of your presentation when we're talking about water vulnerability, or
why America
maybe
is...
go back on your slide.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, I don't know if that can help, but
now if I can just answer, I think I don't know in what sense America is okay. I understand that map really. I can okay, now I know. Okay, so you're talking about the map of vulnerability. Well, that map's been that map shows various index. It is the vulnerability in the US is equal, but it's far more in continents and countries like in Ethiopia, South Africa, in India. But of course, like when you talk about vulnerability, take for example just one event in the US, the hurricanes every year, and that puts a lot of people under the bar of vulnerability. And there has been new research done to measure, because it's quite tricky to measure vulnerability of people, but it's mainly to measure the exposure of people to events such as hurricanes. So I think yes, America is vulnerable, and that map doesn't show that, and it's quite misleading in a way. But that's because there are other countries, because when you compare one country than another, it of course will show the country which is more than US, and also because of socioeconomic factors.
Great, thank you. I hope it answered to your question, Leia. Let us know in the chat. There was a question about reforestation, saying that when you were talking about deforestation, like that you were missing the reforestation done by growing economic entity like China. So what's your take on, like, is reforestation actually enough, or is it compensating like completely the deforestation?
I think it's a very good question. Reforestation or afforestation, like bringing back the forest, it really does a lot of impact, and of course you really have to look at what kind of, because not just greening will help. It's not just you plant any plant, of course, because once you remove the native forest, you just cannot get that exactly replaced. But that doesn't mean that you just plant forest, because ecologically you have to make a balance in terms of what kind of species is going to come, and yes, it does put a very strong impact on our natural environment. But you compare what it is, because there was a paper recently talking about India and China making the world green, and the bottom line of that, in China, of course, is there has been very good effort of regaining the lost forest. In India, it has been mainly agricultural expansion, so it's green, but it's different sort of green.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, because even though reforestation is completely needed to absorb CO2 emission, first the deforestation is gonna create more CO2 emission, and also, as you said, like if there is no diversity, it's quite useless. We've seen like this forest planted in Turkey. I think it's the president that wanted to do a bit of political greenwashing. For once, it was more a political move, but like to plant, I don't know how many trees, and at the end the forest died in a few years because there were no diversity, and it was not sustainable. Is there any other questions?
I see there is one very interesting: why urbanization in Western countries did not cause diseases transmitted from animals to humans. It's actually not true. There has been many cases of infectious diseases, which every year in the US is the local. There's flu as well, but every year there has been outbreak of diseases. It doesn't, thank God, it doesn't become a pandemic. It's been contained well, or it's been tracked well, or it's not that communicable with human to human transmission. But that doesn't mean it's not happening because of cutting forests in the Amazon, or even your own forests in the US. It's happening there as well. One of the other reasons, my friend was asking, that there are many outbreaks happens in many countries in Africa, and why they don't spread as much as this spread. You really have to understand, the computer we are using, from the mobile phone you're using, is made in China. The amount of interaction we have with this country is a lot. I mean, for example, you talk about international flights to Mali, or to international flights to Lagos, is far less than Beijing and Shanghai. So the connectedness, we are connected with China and for other places, really talks about how really connected we are, first of all, to China, and also how different countries are interconnected.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't see any other questions, but I'm sure out of 75 people, there should be more questions. Maybe we can wait a bit. Otherwise, do you have a question? No, actually, yeah, go ahead. No, it's just wondering, like, what would be your take on, because we know, as you mentioned, like, obviously that's not the way it can happen, right? It cannot be how we are forced into creating a more sustainable growth and more sustainable life. It has to be from something that we control and that we decide, because otherwise people are just suffering from unwanted, like, unemployment and social consequences and everything. So what do you think on what's going to happen when things actually pick up? Because do you think it could be actually worse, and it could be an excuse to put environmental issues on the side? Because I know none of us can know, but what's your take on that? We're gonna
I
go
think
back there like crazy, and
I think in my family, with my brother and others, we've been talking about this quite a lot, and I think there's a lot of stress among, and this whole opinion comes from my discussion with my family and friends, and it's really looking into alternatives, because you're looking at, for example, renewable energy. You look at wind, and you can look at solar, and for example, we need such, because so far we have not thought about social alternatives, because so far it has been environmental alternatives. So you remove coal factory to a solar plant, but what happens to the workers who used to work in those factories? And so we are obviously transferring an alternative. So I think the key thing is to really look at alternatives as we go along, as we really start to to come back to our economy, start kicking in. I think there will be a very, I think people will be now interested to look at alternatives. And for example, simple alternatives would be like, maybe in New Delhi now, from every Monday, it would be a public transport day. And maybe people would be now really care and would be really conscious that, okay, fine, one day on a Monday, let's try to use the public transport. And I think there's also a need to report that, because so far what has happened is that we only report bad things. Deforestation, we know how many forests we lost. Now is the first time that we know that because we are staying home, this is the amount of carbon has gone down. And I think that report helps it gives a positive sense. And I think reporting is very important as we move along.
yeah, I think especially more than a lot of people could feel. From what I've heard, also, it's like, oh, this is what we need to do to actually make the planet like better, because that sucks. Because if we have to stay at home, and like all the efforts and the frustrations and everything that we have to go through to actually get things better, it can also be very depressing. So you really need to emphasize how much it's needed and how much good it makes for people to see it
Right.
differently than just like something taken from them.
I think there's May Zhao is asking, I feel very overwhelmed while digesting the heavy climate reality. Do you have any suggestion about how to combat uh, the climate anxiety that we commonly encounter? Yeah, of course, join more webinars. I think talking with people actually helps. And especially talking with people from different disciplines. And I think that has been really key in my family upbringing, is that my brothers and sisters, we come from a very different disciplines, and we have different ideologies. And I think sharing those, if I'm not getting the question wrong about climate anxiety, but I think sharing and understanding disciplines of different people. So if you're working as a bank manager and I'm working as a social worker, how we perceive our climate and environment and how that affects, I think that's communication is missing so far. And I think there's a huge need for a bank manager to talk with a climate scientist and to share their experience of climate anxiety. That might help, but there's no answer for it. But I think that just addresses what you're asking, probably.
Yes, I think acting is the best way to feel less anxious about all that. I
True.
think we answered quite a bit Olga's question about, do you think the situation in the future will get worse or better? Will humans learn the lesson? I think we covered that a bit, but do you have anything
Yeah.
to add to that?
Uh, uh, Sorry, can you repeat that?
Will we learn the lesson,
We
basically?
will learn the lesson. It really depends on it. Like, it's really, and also it depends on the leaders. You see, there's of course a lot of what we can do by communicating and understanding between us. We can use less plastic. We can use our cars once a week. There's a lot of things what we can do, but I think ultimately it has to come from our leaders, from Modi, Donald Trump, President Xi Jinping. I mean, it has to come from them ultimately, because that's what the key is, really.
They have to learn the lesson. Someone said
People who are
alternative energy instead of just hoping renewable energy will miraculously save us.
okay, that's a statement. Yeah.
Yes, that's more of a statement. But if you want to add something about what do you mean by alternative energy to this person called iPhone right now. Okay, next question. To what extent do you think some of the positive changes brought about by the pandemic can stick after the lockdown is lifted?
I think there will be at a very high extent linked, especially now that there are people reading about it, there are people understanding that one. I think it was in India, a 5-day lockdown in New Delhi reduced carbon emissions, air pollution PM 2.5 in New Delhi by 90%, and I think that will have a psychological impact on people. Not only people, especially on the government and people together as well, that there's something but which was going on the other side, and there is the need to look at it in a very different view. So I'm hopeful that there will be a positive impact from this.
Okay.
In lockdown currently in the US, Europe, and other countries will come out of it and ready to travel, shop. Do you foresee a dangerous increase of emissions, and is there any current initiative to help people keep their emissions low enough? So that I'm not sure about emissions, how people are advised to keep their emissions level low. It has to be, of course, comes from within, but I don't see a dangerous increase. I think we are already in that dangerous level, really. There is no really up, because what the data I've been reading at, there's the level we have reached already. So I think, yes, it's very alarming when people, again, we start moving from this, but we have to really understand that this break will have a positive impact on our environments. But that lift off of lockdown and what will happen then is very hard to measure, because you're asking about human emotion. You're talking about humans now, and it's very hard to measure what's going to happen. It's just a trend which we need to look at. It's very hard to answer that question, really.
Yeah, I think we could see in China, for example, like a lot of people going back in to buy luxury products after
Yeah.
the lockdown. So it is indeed something that we can, but other places in the world are also very different from China, and maybe the economic consequences are going to be way worse also.
Yeah.
So I'm not hoping for an economic depression, but that could also actually limit people' ability to go travel and shop.
Yeah, I think that the way the economy, like one of the things which Chinese government is trying to do is to not boost up the economy traditionally what China has done, which is building urbanization, but to now look at technological innovations, to look at how telecommunications and involvement of 5G, 6G, 7G can actually help in reducing and understanding infectious diseases. So I think there's a lot of technological advancement it's already happened in past 1 month. We have more apps and more technological, more big data coming in and helping and understanding this very complex topic of climate change. Oh,
Yes.
yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Definitely Zoom is one of them yeah.
Great. So no other questions. So maybe I will. Okay, one more question.
Is it true that the overall temperature in the year 2020 will be relatively lower as compared to the other years? We're saying.
Okay, just read the end for people that might not see. Do you think COVID-19 induced lockdown and successive shutdown in human activities will further decrease to overall temperature in the world?
I don't see the temperature really affecting this, because it's not just, so you see, temperature is not just 3 months cumulative and that will affect your annual temperature. Temperature of 2020 is being decided of long term in last 30 years. So the carbon emissions which has happened in last 30 years has decided already that 2020 will have X amount of temperature. So no, in 2020 you will not see a drastic change in temperature. You will see probably in after 10-15 years there might be a slight one, but because of COVID, because of this, you'll actually see that summers, I'm very worried about this year's summer because of our oceans are warming up very rapidly than normal average. So I don't think so it's going to impact much on the temperature this year.
Okay, one more question. Could you tell us more about the expansion of Shanghai in the marine ecology in one of the previous slides?
Right, thank you. I mean, I studied that 4 years. So if you really are interested, we can have a talk on email as well. Shanghai have reclaimed around, as I said, around it's the largest in the world. All the if you look at all mega cities around the world, Shanghai has reclaimed around more than 500 square kilometers, and that's mainly has come from reclamation of wetland, of marshy land around Shanghai, and that has definitely because of demand of land. But the very recent planning over reclaimed land is actually to get back the lost wetlands. So if you are in Shanghai, if you go around Dishui Lake or if you go around Chongming Island, you'll see there's a lot of the land use, typical land use. There's a lot of ecological wetland parks. So what they are trying to do with the Chinese ecological red line policy is that they're trying to restrict 1/4 of his land for conservation and preservation, which is a huge amount of land. And reclamation plays major role in achieving that. But of course, there has been a lot of ecological damage to Shanghai because of coastal land reclamation. You can read about my paper, but you can definitely get in touch with me. I would love to talk about reclamation if you're interested.
Thank you. Another question. So that was about the energy mentioned before. So have you studied the geographical impact of mining for raw materials to make lithium batteries for electric cars and silicon for solar panels? This is why it is a relief to hear you discuss alternative social choices, energy versus renewable energy infrastructure, which is actually resource incentive. Big topic.
It's very cool. Thank you for putting that up. It's human tendency that after eradicating COVID-19, in order to fulfill the human needs, the industry and the automobile work at large amount and will bring same situation of affecting the climate. COVID-19 is nature call to look up. It is. I mean, it is something which has come up to notice, because this is something which was never noticed by my friends and family or any other, because air pollution we see and it's happening, we just move on. Now that we are in our houses, we can actually see it in front of us. Also with kind of new latest technology, we can represent it, that it more we can understand it better.
Okay, just to come back to the question before, like he was asking actually if you had anything about the impact of mining for raw materials. Is it something that you?
It's something. It's a big topic. It's something really I'm not familiar with. Although I have been to a couple of. I know people into mining industry, but it's something I really want to learn also as well. But I have nothing really to comment on that industry. But it's an industry which is definitely looked upon to, yeah.
It's an interesting topic. Maybe we could do another
webinar. Yeah, why don't you talk
about that? Anyone that is working on this topic would be interested. Okay, so I think that's all for the questions.
Mm.
I will just introduce quickly the workshop that we do on climate collage and explain a bit the project. If there are more questions coming meanwhile, we'll come back to that. That's very quick. So I just wanted to take the chance that we are having this discussion on climate change to talk a bit about the climate collage, because that's a project that we really care about and that we're really happy to be involved in. It's a project that started in France, but is now going global. It's a workshop that has been created by a climate scientist in France in order to really help people to understand the big picture of climate change in a very playful and using collective intelligence and quite fun way for the topic. Their goal is to reach 1 million people in 5 years, so until 2022. And so we have been involved with them to help them spread this workshop and this tool in Shanghai for already a year or so. So I just want to tell you a bit more about what it is. So this is a workshop that goes in 3 steps. The first step is a thinking process where we actually give cards to people and they have to collaboratively try to recreate the causes and effects of climate change. So they have to guess like what you were talking about. So CO2 emissions going into the atmosphere is going to create a rising of temperature. So put this all back into the right cause-effect relationships, and then going through a creative process to help them internalize the knowledge and the information, and like discussing, creating, like drawing the connections and really making it their own work. And finally, they're gonna come together and present what you can see on the back is how it could look like. It really depends on the teams. Once they have put the big picture of climate change together, to start having a discussion on what we can do with our job, what we can do with in our lives. So I just wanted to say a few words about it because we have a group for the ones that would be interested in to be a part of it. The concept is to reach as many people as possible. So we are going to companies, schools, we're doing it for public, and we're also training other people to become themselves facilitators so they can train and do it with other people. So for example, teachers or people doing working for NGOs, or even if they're green companies, can be trained to then become a facilitator and use it with their teams or their beneficiaries or anything. So yeah, so we have this group where we post update about it. You can also contact us directly if you're interested to know more. Is there questions related to? No. Okay, so I think there is no more questions related to Dhriti's talk. So as he said, you can be in touch with him directly. This is 2 events that we have coming up soon. Next week, actually, on Tuesday, we have an event still for Earth Day with Green Initiatives talking about a talk on regenerative economy. And next Thursday, we're launching a new webinar series where we invite every time 3 sustainable solutions from our network to pitch what they are doing. So any solutions that can help make business models or business practices more impactful and more sustainable. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all your great questions. We will send the more info in the group, more info by emails to the one that have signed up. And that's all. Have a wonderful night, a wonderful evening, and see you next time.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Dhriti. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. See you.
Thank you.